My name is Fiona Sweeney and I work in Access and Lifelong Learning, and I'm joined by my colleague Antoine Bideau, who is our Outreach Officer, and also, as I said, we're joined by Orla, who is our Irish Sign Language interpreter. So this evening, I am going to cover some information on the different pathways into UCD, what you can expect as a student here in UCD, and then we're going to concentrate on the HERE scheme and the DARE scheme, and then I'll tell you a little bit about some other pathways that are available and some next steps. So the takeaway message I'd like you to take away from this evening is that there's lots of admissions pathways into UCD, and we've excellent student supports for all students. So if you're interested in a course here, I'd like you to know that there's different ways of getting in, and also we have great post-entry supports for when you come to UCD. My next slide is full of facts and figures, but the one I'd like you to take notice of is the 34.6%. So a third of our students are coming from diverse backgrounds. So they are students with disabilities, students that come from low income, mature students, students that come in through the QQI FET pathway, students that are Irish travellers or Roma background, students that are part-time, and then also students that may be in international protection. So we have a really diverse student campus here in UCD. My next slide then is just going to show you that there's actually 7 pathways into UCD. Some of these that you may be aware of and some are not. And we'll go through them as in the course of the presentation. So there's schemes like the HERE scheme, DARE, QQI, FET, mature entry, university access, and open learning. We also have lifelong learning, which is short interest courses that lots of students use as a stepping stone. And a quarter of our first year places are ring fenced for these pathways. So moving on to look at what you can expect as a student in here in UCD. So as I said, we've some great post-entry supports. So the first thing is if you come in any of those pathways that I've mentioned, we have a student welcome. It's usually at the end of the end of August, early September, and it's designed to give students a head start in settling into UCD, get familiar with the campus, and also it's an opportunity to get to know some other familiar faces in your programme. We also have academic skills and wellbeing workshops. We do one-to-one meetings with student support officers. We have our Access Leader programme. We also have a suite of scholarships and financial supports. And then we would have disability supports, both exam and classroom accommodations, and also a suite of assistive technology. So they're all the supports that a student would get if they come in any of the pathways that I'm talking about this evening. Then within UCD, we also have the Writing Centre located in the library, and that's available for all students. And it kind of looks at how the writing style and academic requirements are different to what you might have experienced before coming to UCD. We have the Maths Support Centre, which is for students that would have a maths element of their programme. You'll also get a peer mentor. So this is like an access leader. These are students that are a little bit older, a bit more, I suppose, more experienced in UCD life. You'll also have your programme and your college office, your student advisor, and a library support. So there's a huge range of supports available here. The other supports that we have are our scholarships and our financial supports. So the Cothrom na Féine is the scholarship scheme here in UCD. It's needs-based, and it's the largest scholarship scheme for access students in the country. It's named after UCD's motto, Cothrom na Féine, which is around levelling the playing field, equality and justice. We have up to 100 scholarships that we give out each year. They're for all undergraduate programmes. We also have the Sanctuary programme, and this is for students who would be in international protection and can't avail of other supports or other national supports. We also have the Think Again, which is for mature women returning to education. UCD is part of the national 1916 bursary schemes, so you may have heard of those as well. So scholarships can range from around 1,500 right up to 7,000. So some of them are very substantial, worthwhile scholarships. We also are part, or students can avail of, the student support funds. So we have one for part-time students, we have one for the students coming in through the HERE scheme, and also students that are parenting. So there's extra supports there for students. So in order to be eligible for Cothram na Féine, you need to have a family income of less than 50,840. You need to have entered one of the admissions pathways, so either have come in through HERE, DARE, QQI, FET, mature entry, open learning, or university access, and then be a member of the HEA priority groups. So these are groups that are underrepresented at third level at the moment. In recent time, we've been able to negotiate an income disregard then with SUSI and social protection. And what that means is that any of the income a student gets from a scholarship isn't counted as part of the family income. So it should have no impact on your SUSI eligibility or any eligibility you have for social protection payments. So they're all the post-entry supports, or why you might choose UCD for those particular supports. So there's 5 pathways that are of particular relevance to students that maybe are doing their Leaving Cert. So the first one is HERE, the Higher Education Access Route. Then we have DARE, the Disability Access Route to Education. We have QQI FET. We have University Access for Arts, Humanities, Social Sciences and Law, and we have Open Learning. So I am going to, in the next couple of slides, take you through each of those programs, but we are going to concentrate first of all on the HERE and the DARE scheme. So looking at these schemes, so in UCD, as I said, we have a dedicated quota for these particular schemes. And this year for 2025 entry, students that are both HERE and DARE eligible will be prioritised, and also students that either have a physical or a sensory disability, they will be prioritised. So sensory disabilities are students that are maybe blind or visually impaired, or students that are deaf or hard of hearing. So we offer these places, or places to these students first before we offer any other places. So what are you applying for then with the HERE and DARE schemes? So you're applying for a place that's offered on reduced points, and you're also getting a post-entry supports. So it's like a complete package. So you get your place that's offered on reduced points, and also then you get post-entry supports. And these could include financial, academic, social, or personal. So how are you considered? So first of all, students need to meet a minimum of 300 points. You also need to have the program requirements. So these would be things, if there's like a language requirement of your course, or maybe a lab science, you need to meet those anyway. And then if your Leaving Cert points fall within a 20% reduction, you're eligible then to compete for these places that are offered on a reduction. So there's no bonus points added on to your Leaving Cert. Sometimes I know students interpreted that they get extra points by being eligible for HERE and DARE, but you don't. So your points are as they are, but if they fall within the reduction, you're then eligible to compete for the places. And unfortunately, there's no guaranteed entry because we have a quota of places. So first, looking at the HERE scheme. So with each of these schemes, we have a booklet, a detailed booklet that has all of the information. And these booklets are available from Access College website. Your career guidance would have them as well, but they're available publicly to anybody who'd like them on the Access College website. So here is for students that will come from families, low-income families. So there's 6 criteria that we look at. So the first is that your family income is below 46,790, and the year we look at is 2023. Then the other indicators we look at is there a medical card, a GP medical card in the family? So do you as an applicant have one, or does your family have one? Is there a means tested social welfare payment in the family? are your parents, is their occupation one of those that are underrepresented at third level? Then have you attended a DEIS school? And then do you live in an area of concentrated disadvantage? So there's 6 pieces of information that we look at. There's questions on those 6 things. You don't need to meet all 6. You need to meet the income one, certainly, and then a combination of 2 others. So if I go back to this slide and just show you. So everybody needs to meet the income one. That's number 1. And then you can have one from 4, 5, and 6, and then another one. So that's what I mean by the combination. Okay. So you need to meet the income limit, and then the right combination of 2 other indicators to be eligible. So the application is online. So that's why we have the booklet, and it has all of the questions in it, so that you can have a look at what's needed beforehand, before making your online application. So on the online application, you'll be asked for personal details like your name, your address, and your school. You'll be asked information, have you a medical card? You'll be asked to describe your parents' occupation, and then you'll be asked to complete a table on who contributes to the financial income in the family. And that table will generate a checklist of the supporting documents that you need to fill or submit. So the online application is part of your CAO application. You'll see a section for that. And then the supporting documents are posted into the CAO. So those, depending on what you tick in the table, you will be asked to submit some supporting documents. So for example, if your parents are in paid work, they'll be asked to send in a statement of liability. And this is what we used to be called a P21, and it's for the year 2023. If they're self-employed, it'll be a self-assessment letter, and that's called a Chapter 4, and it's for the same year, 2023. And then if you're in receipt of social welfare, you can either use the form that's supplied in the book, or you can get a statement from social welfare. And then for any students that are in the care of the state, you just need to submit a letter from TUSLA. So that's an example of some of the documents that you need to submit. So this slide, it's not particularly good, it's a bit blurred, but it just gives you an example of what the statement of liability looks like, and the chapter for the self-assessment. So just to point out that the statement of liability has a back and a front. So there's 2 sides to it, and it's really important that you send in both of those sides. For the Chapter 4 the self-assessment, there's several pages to this, and again, it's very important that you send all of the pages, not just the front one. So that's just to give, but again, those examples are in the booklet, to be able to have a look at that. Okay, so moving on then to look at the DARE scheme. So the DARE, as I said, is Disability Access Route to Education. There are a number of disabilities that are eligible. So these would include Asperger's or ASD, ADHD and ADD, blind, visually impaired, deaf, hard of hearing, DCD, dyspraxia, mental health conditions, neurological conditions, speech and language communication disorders, significant ongoing illnesses, physical disability, and then specific learning difficulties, and these could include dyslexia or dyscalculia. Now, so like the HERE scheme, there is a number of criteria that you need to meet. So number 1, your disability needs to have had an impact on your education, your second level education. And then the second is that, excuse me, you need to have evidence of the disability. So those 2 pieces of information goes together to make your determine your eligibility. So, excuse me now, just a minute. First of all, looking at evidence of a disability. So you have 2 options here. First of all, if you've already got an existing report, you can use that. Or secondly, you can download the evidence of disability form and you can get your consultant to fill that in. So it needs to be stamped and signed and on appropriate by the appropriate professional, and it needs to be accompanied either by a business card or on headed paper. Again, there is a booklet, and in that booklet you will see that there is a table with all of the eligible disabilities, the appropriate professional that needs to sign off on the report, and then if there is any age requirements. So some reports, it can be from a number of years ago, but there are a number of conditions where we need an up-to-date report. They would include ADD, ADHD, mental health condition, and a significant ongoing illness. So those three conditions need a report within the last 3 years. The other thing to mention is that a GP can complete the evidence of disability for you, but they must have the supporting evidence from the consultant, and that needs to be included. So a GP letter on its own is not sufficient. You need to have the evidence from the consultant as well. So just to recap on that, so for your evidence of disability, you have 2 options. If you have an existing report and it meets those requirements, you can send that in, or else you can download the evidence of disability form and get your consultant to fill that in and submit that. So moving on then to the second piece of information you need to submit, and this is the educational impact statement. And what this does is it, I suppose, demonstrates how your disability has impacted on your second level schooling. The student has a piece to fill in, and then the school has a piece to fill in. So something as well important to note. So students that are applying under a specific learning difficulty, either dyslexia or dyscalculia, they can have a report of any age, but you must have up-to-date attainment tests, and they can be included in the educational impact statement. So school can do those tests for you locally, but they need to have them as part of it. So again, like the HERE scheme, there's 6 pieces of information that we look at with regard to educational impact. So the questions are, have you received any interventions and support at school? Has it impacted on your attendance? Has it impacted on your school experience and well-being? Has it impacted on your learning or your exam results? Has there been a change in your exam results? And then there's an option 5 if there's something else that isn't included in those 4 options. And then, as I said, for students that have a specific learning difficulty, we ask for 2 of your literacy scores need to be at or below the 10th percentile. And then if you're applying under dyscalculia, it's 2 of the numeracy scores need to be at or below the 10th percentile. And the tests would be included in the educational impact statement. Okay, so moving on then to timelines. So the first and the most important thing to do is to make your CAO choices and to fill in your CAO completely, and to do that by the 1st of February. Then you have an option to complete the HERE or the DARE section, or both if you feel now you're eligible, and you need to have done that by the 1st of March. And again, it's really important, you have to opt in. So there's a question on both the HERE scheme and on the DARE scheme, do you want to be considered? And you have to say yes. So that's important. And then you need to send your supporting documents to the CAO by the 15th of March. And they're very strict on that. And what we also advise students is to get a receipt of postage when you're posting it. So you don't need to send it registered post, but if you just get a certificate or a receipt of postage, you have evidence then that you posted it on time, just in case something goes missing in the post. So students will be informed at the end of June. It's usually the last week of June of their application. There is an appeals process. So if you feel a mistake has been made, that you can use that process. Offers are made in round one. So once we get the Leaving Cert offers, or the Leaving Cert results, offers will be made in round one. That was August of this year, so hopefully it will be a similar time. And then you'll be invited to your student welcome, which is usually the end of August or early September, depending on when round one happens. So there are all your dates. So just, I suppose, a word in relation to the SUSI grant. So sometimes we have students that would kind of confuse either here or there with the SUSI grant. So SUSI is separate. If you apply for here or feel you're eligible for here, you really should be applying to SUSI as well. SUSI now have an eligibility checker, so you can put in your family income and you will get an indication of whether you are eligible for it or not. They have changed their income thresholds over the last 2 years. So students who may not have been eligible in the past and come from families maybe who have an income of up to 100,000 could be eligible for some level of support from SUSI. So it is worth checking that out. So this slide just gives you some details of the website. So it's www.susi.ie that you can start applying from April. And then that's some of the contact details for SUSI. Okay. So moving on then to tell you a little bit of information in relation to some of the other pathways then into UCD. So as I said, we have QQI FET. So 25 of UCD programs have developed progression pathways from QQI FET. There is a dedicated quota for this. There is a full list of what those pathways are on the website, and we also have a booklet which will be on our website in the next couple of weeks. And that gives you the information on the kind of required modules and the entry requirements. So again, it is an opportunity to go and maybe study in a college of further education for a year, and then come on and to your undergraduate degree in UCD. And then just to note that with some of the courses, it is quite competitive. For example, nursing, but some of the other courses are less competitive. So that's another pathway in. The next then, which is a new one for school leavers, is our University Access course. So what this is it's a part-time, it's a course that prepares you for an undergraduate degree. Why I'm telling you about it this evening is that one of the streams, so access to arts, humanities, social sciences and law, that they have, you don't need to be over 22. And once you meet some access criteria, which I'll talk you through, and there is progression into 13 undergraduate programs. So these, so as I said, for arts, humanities and social and science and law, young adults now, it's open to young adults who I suppose are under 22. Then the second pathway, which is SEAM+, so that's into engineering, arts, agricultural science, medicine, veterinary medicine, that you need to be 22 for that, but it could be something down the line. So the access criteria that we look at, so if you've gone to a DESH school, if you've a household income of less than 55,000, excuse me, 924, you have a medical card, means tested social welfare payment, if you're coming from an area of disadvantage or your parents didn't attend college. So if you have 3 of those and you're interested in doing arts, humanities, social sciences and law, you can apply for university access. Or if you are eligible for the HERE scheme in either 24 or 25, they would qualify you for that as well. So it's another pathway worth considering. Then we also have open learning. So open learning is part-time, it's flexible. You don't need any prior entry requirements. All you need is a readiness and to study. So what students can do is they can book on to modules, and then they can accumulate those modules up to a certificate and or a diploma, and then they use that as an entry pathway into 16 programs. So this slide gives you an overview of the different programs that are available. So again, it's another option for students. You would do the open learning module starting in September 2025, and then you would use that as an entry pathway into 2026.